want to do an intro because there's not really a whole lot to say. I went to Hershey and now I'm going to talk about it. Go figure, I guess. This is my first park review and I hope to do many more, so if you like that, then hit the subscribe button so you won't miss it. So here's the format for my park reviews. For most of the video, I'm going to be walking you through my day, ride by ride. I'll also talk a little bit about each ride as I go, then I'll talk about the park as a whole and other things like operations, safety procedures, and food at the end. So let's just get into it right away. The first ride we hit was Laugh Track. I've heard the line gets pretty long on this, and since the line is partly indoors, we wanted to get this out of the way first to, avoid people. It was a pretty decent spinning coaster, and the theming spiced it up enough to differentiate itself from other spinning coasters. Not much to say here. Next we went to Lightning Racer, and surprisingly enough, there was actually a bit of a wait. It was only like 5 minutes, but it still surprised me and did not bode well for the rest of the day. Now, I haven't been on very many GCIs, only 3, this one included. So saying that this is my favorite is not really saying enough because the rest are kind of lackluster, but this is my favorite GCI. The racing aspect was cool, but the layout had some pretty noticeable pacing issues. It really does crawl towards the end. Next we went to the other GCI in the park and probably my least favorite coaster of the day, Wildcat. This is probably the worst coaster pound for pound in the park, as the only coaster I would rank lower than it is Coco Cruiser, and that's a kiddie coaster. This was really rough. I know it's old, but come on, there's gotta be something that Hershey could do because I was getting jackhammered throughout the entire ride. I even liked the mine train more than this. After a rough ride on Wildcat, we decided to hit a smooth ride, Fahrenheit, and can I just say, this is one weird ride. I was really looking forward to it, but I'm gonna be honest, it was kind of disappointing. A lot of people compare this to Shellraiser, so I thought it would be a lesser but still solid version of Shellraiser. But guys, this ride does not even hold a candle to Shellraiser. It was pretty forceless, and the last airtime pop at the end is good, but you can just go to the front of the park for the good stuff. Next, we went to Trailblazer. There's not really much to say about this. It's a mine train. They're all pretty similar. After Trailblazer, we ate lunch. I'll get to the food later, so next we hit Sidewinder. This had the vest restraints that basically eliminate headbanging, so I think you can actually enjoy this Vekoma boomerang. Whoa. Overall, it was pretty solid. I know a lot of people don't like these boomerangs, but trust me, if your issue with them is the roughness and the headbanging, then you'll probably like this ride. After that, we did Coal Cracker, their log flume. Yes, I know this isn't a coaster, but I like to do one non-coaster ride at every park I go to just so I can get a sense of the quality of the other stuff. This is a pretty average log flume, but after riding a lot of coasters, it kind of just felt uneventful. The drop was okay, a bit shallow, but not terrible, but the location was unbeatable. Having Great Bear and normally Super Duper Looper soaring around you makes this ride 10 times better. So next we did naturally Great Bear. In my opinion, this ride is kind of underrated. Like I said, the setting is great. The entire ride is basically a feet chopper. I found myself pulling my feet in closer to my body for the entire ride. I don't know if it's because this was my second invert, but this is one of my favorite coasters in the park. I was expecting a mediocre B&M Looper, but I got one of my favorite inverting coasters. Great Bear is crazy underrated. Speaking of underrated, next we rode Comet. And I'm gonna be honest guys, going into Hershey, I thought Comet was going to be really weak. I heard some good things from people, but I thought it's just an old wooden coaster. How good could it really be? But I gave it a shot in the back row, and it blew away all of my expectations. It's just such a good ride. If you think it looks weak from the POVs, then you're just like me, and you'll probably have your socks knocked off when you ride it. The airtime is some of the best in the park, and there's some pretty tough competition. I would be lying if I said this isn't a top 15 coaster for me. Yeah, this made my top 15. It looks small, but it really is a monster. Don't skip Comet, you'll thank me later. So we finally made it to the 2 hypers, and these are also the best 2 coasters in the park. First we went to Skyrush, as it was right next to Comet. I'm just gonna say it right now, this is my #1 coaster. I'm thinking of doing a video comparing this and El Toro, so I'll save most of my thoughts for that video, but this is just a really powerful ride. This redefines ejector airtime. It's just so strong, so powerful that you really question if those tiny restraints will keep you in. But then you think about the searing leg pain from the pressure and all of those questions are gone. The restraints are bad. There's no way around it, and you will get stapled, and you'll get stapled hard. My dad rode Skyrush with me in the back row, and when we got off, his pants were wet. At first we thought he might have peed himself or something, but no, he's not a 2-year-old. There was a pack of wet ones in his pocket that had been squeezed up against his thighs so hard that it deflated like a balloon. I'm not even kidding, I wish I had a picture. If that doesn't illustrate how bad these restraints are, then I don't think anything will. They are also different from other restraints. On other coasters like Superman the Ride, for example, the restraints are kind of just like dead weight. It's heavy, but you can hold it up. On Skyrush, the restraints feel like they're running on some sort of pressure or suction system that pins you to your seat. But despite my problems with the restraints, the ride is still really good. After Skyrush, we went over to Candemonium, the new B&M Hyper. This is easily the longest wait of the day, so I would recommend doing this later like we did to avoid the crowds because people flock to it in the morning. But in total, it was only about 30 minutes, so it was fine. This is a great B&M Hyper. Not my favorite, but really close. The speed hill and the first huge camelback are definitely the highlights for me. But the whole thing is being held back by trim brakes. The trim brakes really hit hard in this one, and it does kind of take away from the airtime. Overall, a great ride. The outer bank was overhyped a little bit, and if it didn't get trimmed to death, it would probably be my favorite hyper, but everything else still delivered. So we did go back for rerides in Skyrush and Candemonium, but the ride experience was basically the same on both, so let's move on to safety procedures. The procedures here were actually pretty good. People were wearing masks, it was sort of social distanced, and there weren't running trains at full capacity. It was much better than Great Adventure. That was like a virus field day. But I'll talk about that in my Great Adventure review. The new entrance was nice and spacious, and it prevented a bottleneck when everyone was trying to get into the park in the morning. Oh, also, I didn't get sick. Let's talk about food for a minute. I got grilled cheese and kettle cooked chips for lunch. We also got crab fries from Chicken and Pete's. I'd say it was all pretty good, maybe a bit above average for a theme park, but with a park themed around candy, that should be expected. Okay, let's talk about the worst part about the day. The ops. The ops were pretty good, but they weren't amazing. Their dispatches definitely could have been a little faster, and they were only running one train on each side of Lightning Racer in the morning, but that probably could have changed later in the day. But overall, the ops weren't bad. They were pretty average, and that's fine. They're allowed to be average. Sometimes when the rest of the park is so good that when something is just kind of okay, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So yeah, while they were the worst thing about the park, they still weren't that bad. It didn't really detract from the experience as a whole. So overall, I really enjoyed my day at Hershey. Yeah, it sucks that Stormrunner and Super Duper Looper were closed, but once you get past that initial disappointment, you'll find a lot of great coasters. 2 great hypers, a great B&M invert, an underrated PTC, a solid GCI, a solid mine train, a bad credit, and a couple other things. This is my favorite day of the year so far, but considering the fact that I've only been to 3 parks, that's not really saying too much. And one of those days was not very good. So overall, I'm going to give Hershey Park a very solid 9 out of 10.